Hello, this is Denisa, and welcome to the third part of my Flutter video series. In the last video, we started making this color switch app in which the end goal is to have two widgets that switch color when we press this button, and learn about the basic Flutter layout and how to set the basic layout out. And in this video, we're going to finally get it working, finally get some function in that button, get it to switch. So what we need to do first is actually place this inside a stateful widget. So what is happening now is that this is a stateless widget, so it can't really change state. That is, if you press the switch button and try to press a function, create a function here inside the button where the widgets change place, it will not change because it's a stateless widget. It will, well, if you what you need to do is place it inside a stateful widget. So this is what it looks like if you're using the quick fix menu. But to learn, we're gonna learn. So we're going to instead do it ourselves here. So instead of attaching a stateless widget, we're instead going to attach state, which is created with stateful widgets, and I'm going to explain this in a bit. But for now, we're just going to create remake this into a state, and this is the usual convention of how you'd write it. So color switch, instead of being a stateless widget, is now state. So color switch state. And what we need to do is we're going to create a stateful widget which calls this widget every time it's updated. So it's create the state every time it's going to be updated. So class color switch. This is now our widget. Stateful, it extends stateful widget. It's going to override the properties of the stateful widget. And what is it? What we're gonna do is we're gonna do color which state. We're gonna do create state, and its function that calls color switch state. Alright, so what does this line do? Every time, instead of making a stateless widget, what a stateful widget does is that it changes, it creates a state, and every time the app is updated, it throws away that state and updates it with a new state. This also enables a hot reload instead of hot restart. So if we change the color to, let's say, green, for example, we will not restart the whole app, but instead change the state. And you can see that it's green. It's not, and there you go. With this, we can also actually place only the things that are actually changing inside a stateful widget. If you'd like to do that, you can do that. But now I'm going to demonstrate essentially how to get these switched. Okay, so instead of having these written out manually as children, we're going to create a separate class of colors. Of these things, phrase them. And we're gonna call it a color square. And it's going to extend the stateless widget, sorry. And of course, we have the typical builder of a widget, which is this thing right here: widget build context. And I'm going to go over what that actually means when we get to the slide puzzle video, but for now just stick with me. The widget build context, and it's going to return a container, just as we container, just as we did here. In fact, we're going to just copy paste that because we can. I'm going to place that inside here, return container. And that should be a semicolon. Alright, so now we have we don't have it anymore because we cut it over here. But what we can do is replace it with a color square. And it'll basically look like the same thing because you just placed it inside a widget. There you go. And we can replace that blue widget also by generalizing this and making a color property. So now it takes in a color property, and we're gonna make it constructor. So color, going to take the property color, and we can call it like color or something. You can also make it something else. And then we're going to have the constructor, so color square, and then this color. Okay, so you will notice that it complains this class is immutable. That's because this is a variable. You need to make it final so that you pass in the color here, and it won't change later. You're assuring the stateless widget that it won't change later. And we're gonna have color. Alright, so now we can take all this away and replace it with another color square, and we can pass the colors in instead of writing it out ourselves. And those will be colors red again, and this is colors blue. And you will see it looks the same. That's only because you're refactoring. Of course, point is that it should look the same. Now what we want to do is actually have them switch. So now instead of having these colors inside the children, what we're going to do is place it in a list at the beginning of class. So we're going to have a list of widgets, and it's going to be called colors list. If you can think of another name, you're welcome to replace it. And it's just going to contain those two widgets right there. Right, and now what we can do is put that inside the children instead of giving it a list as an argument, so colors list. And it will look the same again because you're not really changing anything, you're just refactoring it. And now that it's in a list outside of the actual build method, what we can do is in the button, finally has functionality, you can make a function for them to swap color. We're going to actually make a function outside this. So what it will do is remove this the last element in the colors list, and then it's going to add it back in as the first sorry, it's the other way around actually. You remove the first element and then you add it at the end of the list. So it's not really swapping, more removing the first widget and then adding it again onto the list. So we're going to have a function that we will eventually call in the flat button later. Swap color. Well, that's it has to be not capitalized. Swap color, and this function that will take the colors list and add the last element. So it's going to remove the first element and then add it onto the list. Remove at, and it's going to be 0. That's the first element of the list. And what we're going to do is call that when we press the button. Swap color. And that, and see what happens. So if you click the button now, you will see that nothing changes. That's because what Flutter is doing is stateful widgets. When you change something inside a stateful widget, the state remains. And in order to display a change, you need to detach the state and essentially update it. So what we need to do is put this inside a set state. So this is the function that updates your state when you need to make a visible change. So we're going to put that inside here. Right, and now it should work. So now if you press switch, and now it switches. Alright, there's one, now it works. So you've got a full functional app, but there's one more thing I want to cover, and that's the topic of keys. So right now this is working. The colors, the squares are stateless widgets. If you press switch, they switch. Not exactly switch, but the first is removed, added to the end, but essentially it's switching positions. But however, if you convert this into a stateful widget, let's do that. You will find that this happens. It still works, of course, but I want to demonstrate. Say if you wanted to, if you store this inside, you store this color inside the state. Let's do color, same thing essentially, and do color square state this color, and then you take that as an argument inside the state. So when you're building you actually pass onto the stateful widget, and then you pass the color into the state, and then you actually use that here. You save right now and you test out the app. you'll find that it doesn't switch anymore. It's not a bug inside the code. Well, it is technically a bug, but it's not that putting the color inside the state does not work. What is happening is that when Flutter is switching these states, these objects, it is not. It is keeping only a reference to the type, so it's not keeping the information about the color. So what you want to do is you need to keep the information of the color when you're of the actual state when you're swapping the stateful widget. So what you need to do is implement this thing called a key. So I'm going to take another argument inside the stateful widget called key, and we're going to make this a name constructor now. So we're gonna have a key called key and this color, and then it's going to also execute the original properties. So key, that's the super. It also does the original first. And now, hopefully, if you've done this right, you'll get an error here. Sounds odd, but that's how it works, of course. Key, so have key, and then you'll have whatever key, and then you'll have color. And what you want to do is have a unique key. So essentially what this will do is keep you also reference all the properties of the widget, not just a reference to the type. So it will not, when what I was happening before is that it was switching, but it was simply not keeping the information. So it does switch under the hood essentially, but it is not appearing to you because it's not keeping the front end aspect of it, that is the color. So now hopefully what will happen is that it will keep the color. Right, now it's switching properly and it's working. So why am I talking about this? Why did I just not use a stateless widget? Of course, if this were a stateful widget, we would need to change the color and we would need to do this. But in this case, you don't need any of that. The reason is that we use keys later when we're doing the slide puzzle, which I will explain in the next video. And I would like to just introduce this concept since it's a useful concept to keep in mind. But essentially, that's it. So now I've got this app working. And of course, you can use stateless widget, but you also now know how the stateful widget works, as well as the keys. And in the next app, I'm going to finally explain the slide puzzle and how it works. But for now, thanks for watching.